Hi, welcome to Cans Across the World, episode 95, joined this week by Alan Mahon, co-founder of Brewgooder. And thanks very much for coming to chat this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to hear a local voice talking about beer as well. Even though I'm in Scotland, it's always good to hear a back home accent. So yeah, definitely delighted to be on the show.
Happy days. Because you're actually from here as well.
Yeah, Belfast originally. Grew up in the Glen Road in West Belfast and moved to Ballycastle when I was about 11, maybe. So yeah, I made the move to Scotland for university, and that was largely based off the fact not of UCAS sort of perspectives, but of the fact that all the bands that I really liked listening to were always playing in Glasgow, and I felt like it was close enough to home that if I ever got homesick, I could jump on the ferry and get back pretty easily.
I think there's something on the water over there. Like Glasgow just produces the best bands as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And then the other best bands come and visit it. So yeah, there must be something in the water. It must be the massive amount of rain that place gets that changes the atmosphere and the dynamics.
You're here today to talk about your craft beer company. Could you tell us a wee bit about your sort of journey in the craft beer world and what sort of inspired you to create Brewgooder?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I could probably take it back to when I left university after listening to all those or watching all those bands playing King Tuts. I ended up traveling just after university to Nepal, and I did a bit of a international development volunteering work there. And I did what everyone tells you not to do, and that's drinking unsafe or a water source where you don't know where it's come from. But I was 22 and I was full of hubris, so I decided to take the chance. And about 3 weeks into that, I started feeling a bit unwell and sick. Things stopped working like they should, and then 3 months sort of down the line, I ended up getting quite badly sort of infected, if you like, with a parasite, which meant that just my digestive system wasn't really working. So I had this experience where I'd become sick from something that I'd really been, used to, coming from where we do. And at that same sort of moment, I was looking for a career, and I thought that this was like a vocational thing for me. I had this experience. I wanted to almost give back to water as a sort of cause, if you like. And I'd started applying for lots of different jobs and different charities and government agencies and got rejected from pretty much every single one of them. And then when I did get a job at a sandwich shop, whenever I was about a year later into that whole journey, I started getting, going from being a poor student to a poor graduate, but I had a bit more money in my back pocket to spend. And I noticed that I did two things really. I started buying better coffee and I started buying better beer. I went from buying £1 pints in the student union to £3 or £4 cans of, even then that sounds quite cheap, of cold water and Daya and all that sort of stuff. And I just was amazed, I guess, by how much passion actually was produced by beer. I always looked at beer, whatever it was, whether it's mass produced lager or whether it's, a sour, lactose pastry, whatever, it evokes a lot of passion. It evokes a lot of, reciprocity. I guess the oldest form of, showing your love for people was, to buy them a pint and then have them buy you one back. And I thought that was always a really simple mechanic. And I felt like there was something in craft beer that actually really dialed that up. People were super passionate about local breweries or new styles that were being developed, or the big American sort of heritage brewers and or the Belgian ones, and people really talked about it, inspired a lot of debate, and people took it quite seriously. And I thought, my own journey, I loved how accessible it was becoming, and I wondered if you could combine that experience that I had with unsafe drinking water and this new emerging love for beer, I guess, and if you can put them together, what could you try and achieve? So I had this notion that we would use our profits from, selling beer to bring people clean drinking water in developing countries. And that's kind of where Brewgooder started, I guess, as that idea. I started to try and get into the actual, move away from the drinking side and get into the actual brewing side of it.
Yeah.
I brewed a batch of beer that we were going to sell at a sort of festival that we were attending, that sandwich shop that I work for. And, I brewed, I think, 1,000 bottles in total, and of clean water lager version 1. About 300 of them started exploding in my living room because they just were not brewed correctly. And the other 700 that survived the hand grenades that they were, tasted absolutely awful. And I thought that there was no way that I could possibly build a brand or, a company that delivered impact at scale. For me, it was a really ambitious target of bringing 1 million people clean drinking water, that I couldn't do that, trying to perfect my own inability for brewing, then scale that up. I felt like there was a much, simpler, I guess, but still challenging model of actually working with bigger breweries, to bring liquids to market that people could access quite easily. And we started with lager, we've grown into the pale ale categories, and we're launching, new beers. Even, as early as next week, we're bringing really cool beers to the market with one of our retail partners. But the idea was that we would work with their spare capacity, we would brew beer, we would sell it, we use the profits for clean drinking water projects. And that 5-year journey has basically brought us to where we are now. And we've been able to unlock hundreds of millions of liters of water on projects that have empowered over 155,000 people, particularly in Malawi, where a lot of that money has been invested, and that's touching the £250,000 invested mark. So it's been a good start. I think we've learned a lot along the way, and we have a rebrand coming up. We have a different way of talking about and delivering the impact that we want to have going forward, so it's easier for drinkers to understand. But I guess there's highlights in there that have brought me from, all the way from that terrible experience of exploding beer bottles through to working with some of the brewers that I've really admired since day one of getting involved with craft beer, really.
Yeah, because some of them are like James and I'm like terrible with names, but the guys from Brewdog.
So we still brew our lager with them. We have done since 2016.
Yeah, like they're absolutely mental. I love how like creative they are about their marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. They've always been known for disruption, for sure. And it's been great to work with them for the past few while, for sure.
Incredible. But your clean water beers, then you've such a big variety. So like the thing that got me was like I watched one of your videos. It's only about like 50 seconds long or something, but it's the dirty pint. You see a fella in Malawi, just like going to pour a pint of water, and it's just so powerful. It's like you don't hear anything. It's just like the wind around him and stuff. But then I was just thinking, I just had a glass of water this morning, and I can't. It's just like puts things into like perspective for you, I think.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, thanks for referencing that campaign. I mean, I think from my point of view, that was to try and get people to understand that, there's this thing, especially if you're in university, called the dirty pint. It's a punishment. It's something no one wants to do. It's something that people, it's a forfeit almost. Like it's something bad that comes on you, but it's not something that stays with you or follows you around for life. And I think that was trying to juxtapose with, I guess, the fact that it's not a choice for, literally hundreds of millions of people. And it's a hard thing, man. I mean, I think the biggest challenge of Brewgooder is that we're trying to talk and speak on an issue which is of global significance to consumers who've never really experienced it in their day-to-day life, like you just kind of highlighted. And I think that's a massive challenge. How do you make it relevant? How do you make what we do relevant to people who will never really come face to face with that? And how do you try and tell that story in a powerful way? And I think we've learned certainly, and you'll see over the next few months how we tell that story is going to change. But we did out of home activations on billboards across the country a few weeks ago, which were basically here's one way of understanding, that normal people have access to water and they go on and live, great lives. But if you cross out some of the stuff, it actually tells a story where people don't. And I think that that's really the essence of trying to get people to understand not just that the beer that they drink helps us cause, but also like what it actually is, and the scale of it.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, because like if you even say to somebody, "Oh, can I get you a glass of water?" They'll say, "I'll run the tap a bit so it's cold." And it's like there's so much waste before.
Yeah, and I looked at it like that as well. But I actually think we have a super abundance of water, particularly in Northern Europe. I guess it's slightly different in the south of England at times when it comes to just the population in some of those places, putting the strain on it. But my example was running the water when you're brushing your teeth. But for people who are listening that haven't seen Dirty Pint or haven't, don't understand as much as I've never experienced the issue. It's not like people in Malawi turn on a tap and nothing goes out. There is no tap. There is no safe source of water. It's, holes in the ground. It's years of, I guess, underdevelopment that is just compounding and compounding and compounding, so that you're born into this cycle, I guess, where your health and your education outcomes are determined by it. So don't ever feel guilty. I mean, it's probably not ideal to run water infinitely, but don't feel guilty about pouring yourself a glass of water. Drinking a pint of beer probably has about 60 or 70 pints of water that have gone into that creation. It's much more about understanding that the water itself is the means of the issue, but the issue is actually empowering people. Like, can people go on to have better lives themselves, to enjoy the same quality of life that you and I enjoy, or the same ability to create opportunities or go after ambitions for themselves? And I think that's really what Brewgooder should be about, and that's what we're trying to, I guess, educate punters about at the same time.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's what got me so excited about it. But you've recently become a BCorp as well. Like, how did it feel being recognized as a?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been BCorp recognized for 3 years now. To be honest, we were the first brewery in Scotland, or beer brand in Scotland, to have that. It feels good. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're highlighted as being one of the sort of best business practice companies in the world, and we're in really, really good company there. Patagonia, for example, is a brand I really admire that's part of that. It feels good, but it also, it takes hard work to keep, getting better, I guess, and it's not a reason to sit back and relax. I think the challenge with BCorp is that it's very hard for that to cut through to consumers, and do consumers really actually know and care enough about that at this moment in time? But as bigger breweries join that march, I guess, I think Brewdog, we're certainly one of them. Northern Monk, there's a few breweries, big breweries that I'm working with to kind of, I wouldn't say consult, but help steer them through that process, so that actually it becomes something that most craft breweries and most big ones are fully shouting about, and drinkers actually care. And eventually it'll get to this stage where they will, hopefully choose BCorp breweries over standard non-BCorp breweries, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. Just like if breweries are also giving something back, as well as making massive profit.
Yeah, totally. And listen, profit is motivates business, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If people can balance that with a care for other things other than profit, then slowly by surely that will hopefully in time, create something that creates value beyond just that bottom line profit that goes to shareholders. And I think if more people can align those two things, then that's a win-win for everybody.
That's it. But I just seen as well, like, you're also doing other beers for like the theater arts, which is like the Jack and Beer hops.
Yeah,
that's so cool. Like, you can buy a ticket. It's up to like £5 to £15, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was kind of I guess it started a wee bit before that. Like, when lockdown came last year, we decided as a team, if we were going to go out under this like hail of crap that was coming our way, like, we might as well do something that we really left the mark with. So we actually launched a campaign called One on Us, which was for NHS workers that could claim a 4-pack of beer paid for by a drinker, and they would leave a little note, effectively like a thank you, and that would be sent across. And we thought, it'd be great to do 1,000 packs or whatever. So we ended up shipping about 28,000 beers across the UK to all these different frontline workers, like at the height of lockdown, like the real dark days of the pandemic. Which was awesome, and that kind of taught us that our brand stood for more than just clean water. It was actually really about people positivity, like how can you use beer to facilitate like just good stuff in the world. So with that, we actually decided, one of the things that we would have got excited about, as a team internally, is a Christmas tradition was going to the panto, going to the theatre, and we couldn't do that obviously because it was locked down. And we just decided, well, if we're not going to be able to go to the panto, why don't we just do one ourselves? So we actually got a few sort of actors who would normally participate in the theatre. Johnny McKnight, who's a panto writer, he ended up writing as a pantomime. We brewed 4 different beers. We worked with Wild Beer, we worked with Monto Beer, we worked with Gypsy Hill, and we worked with Fierce. And we ended up putting together, a story about a small brewery getting visited by the tax man, which was all about the small brewers' duty relief. We had Boris Weatherspoon, who was the bad guy in it, which is obviously Boris Johnson and Weatherspoon combined, and that was really cool. I think that was so much fun to do. We ended up raising about $5,000 for the hardship fund for theatre actors. So yeah, I think that sort of creative way of trying to do something cool for people is definitely something that we want to do more of in the future for sure.
Yeah, it just made me laugh so much just seeing the wee Daisy the Coup like cans and stuff.
I know it was fun, and they were really tasty beers. Like there were beers that really we're super proud of as much as the campaign as well.
Yeah, but like you've always been a brewery of trying to bring people together. Especially like you had the global gathering that was supposed to happen last year. Do you have plans of doing something like that in the future?
Yeah, I mean the global gathering is it's a sad story, I guess. It was going to be our 5th birthday. Is that right? No, our 4th birthday, and we basically asked different brewers. We expected about 100. We ended up getting 254 signing up from 24 different countries. But we asked them, let's brew a beer together, let's release it, let's give people your tap room, let's get loads of, people coming and fundraising and drinking the beer and having a good time. And then it got to like January and we're like, right, there's this virus in China. And then, we looked at the Hong Kong breweries and thought, they might be at risk. And then it sort of kept moving west. And then we saw, I think it was Denmark went into lockdown at the very start of March, and we're like, maybe we've lost Denmark. And then we got to, a couple of weeks out, we're like, this is not the right thing to be doing. You can't be encouraging people to get together at a time when there's effectively a pandemic. So we had to cancel it. And it was, for me, we were working with the likes of Avery, Deschutes, Brooklyn, Beavertown, Northern Monk, like the heroes, like the guys that you really looked up to in the industry, and then it all came crashing down because of the pandemic. So that ended up, a lot of breweries did end up raising or releasing their beer and fundraising from it, and it raised just over $50,000, and that was invested in 2 healthcare facilities that were fighting COVID in Malawi. So that ended up being really, really useful. The sort of that trained 60 nurses in COVID prevention that went into the different villages to sort of build resilience there. And I think the total reach of that was over 60,000 people that were impacted by that, and that will go on for years and years and years in terms of the upgrades to the water facilities in the different healthcare facilities. So yeah, that still had a huge impact, which just shows like what we could have done if the whole thing kind of went off without a hitch. But I think there's appetite for it. I think there's appetite to work on a project like Global Gathering again. But I think for us, the the priority is to allow the recovery of the businesses that were lending us their support, because some of them are sadly no longer with us, and then some of them will be, really hurting and trying to focus on just getting back on their feet again.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, the next global gathering might not be next March; it might be the March after, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's it. Like so many bars and stuff have closed here, and they're never going to open again.
It's so sad, yeah.
Like I think Spaniard's away. Do you remember the Spaniard from?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do indeed. Which is it had all the Virgin Marys all over the place, didn't it? The paintings of it, stuff, and icons. But I think that's really, really hard, because I think Northern Ireland has a really, burgeoning scene in that respect. You got Bullhouse, you got Boundary, you've got more established players like Hilden, etc. And yeah, one of the plans that we have over the next few while is to actually look at Northern Ireland from a distribution point of view, and even a brewing and country point of view. I think if there's any brewers out there who, could see value in helping us bring our beers to the market in Northern Ireland, because we operate on a collaborative basis where we always work in country with breweries, so that we're making the greenest possible beer as well, as ones that basically use Northern Irish water to facilitate this distribution of water around the world to get in touch with us, because it's obviously a place that's close to my heart, having grown up there. But yeah, it would be awesome to see Brewgooder beers. A lot of my family order them constantly and hand them out to their friends and neighbours. So I think there's probably a wee community of Brewgooder drinkers who are already there.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think Bullhouse is probably the best shout. They seem to do a lot of collabs.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was Lucy Goosey, which was like a milkshake sort of IPA thing. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So yeah, probably reaching out to Willie and stuff like that would be incredible.
Yeah, if you have details, pass it on, or if Willie's listening. Yeah, I think they did a beer for the global gathering, which was awesome. But yeah, it would be cool to work with other breweries, and particularly ones like that are in Northern Ireland would be fantastic.
But turn to brewing yourself. I always ask this to every brewer. Like, do you have any like quirks or traditions that you have to do like during the brewing process? Like some people have to do a wee dance. I found out of Dr. Keith Thea of Blue Moon Seria. Like he has like a statue of Aries. Or
a few superstitions. Unfortunately, I'm not the one who does the brewing. We definitely are involved with our brewing process, but we use other people's brewers. So you never know, there's potentially dozens, if not hundreds, of different rituals and dances and statues that get invoked just before our beer goes in. I think I have definitely, from a drinker's point of view, I have traditions. If I leave the city in Scotland and we're stopping off at a pub, I always make sure that whatever's on offer, I always drink a pint of best bitter, Belly Best, Bellyhaven Best, because it's just such a delicious experience. But anywhere I go, I try to drink as local as possible.
Yeah.
So that for me, that's key. I think there's a bar in which is quite a shame. I've been into a lot of times in Belfast. I think is it Woodworkers? Woodworkers?
Oh right? Yeah, just the one just beside Lavery's, yeah.
Lavery's, yeah. And one of the things is like there's always great beer in there. Don't get me wrong, but there's very rarely on draft like Northern Irish craft beers, and I'm not sure why that is. So I think that wherever you go to New York or wherever you go to a place that's got a scene, it's always my ritual is probably not superstitious to drink as local as possible, really. So I can only speak to it from a boozer's point of view rather than a brewer's.
That's it.
I should have maybe done one whenever they were exploding on me and they wouldn't have blown up.
Yeah, maybe that's.
If I had a statue of whoever it was, Egyptian god or whatever, kissed its feet, maybe the beers wouldn't have blown up and the whole story would have been very different.
That could have been it. I mean, maybe, but then there wouldn't have been a Brewgooder out of that. Like, maybe it's.
Yeah, certainly not the way it's turned out anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a parallel universe where it turned out a little bit different.
That's it. But just before we wrap up here, you mentioned you've got some beers dropping and a brand new campaign. Do you have any exciting news that people can watch out for?
Yeah, I can and I can't. The real shame of it is that it's under embargo, literally days away. But I would think we've got some really good collaboration beers that are coming up, and keep an eye on our socials on the 21st of April. We're going to be releasing 2 new beers that hopefully will be online, and in some retailers that might be close to the guys back home. We're also rebranding, if you like. We'll have a new look and feel coming out, and we've got a completely new measure of how each beer makes an impact. And I think that for me is the single biggest thing I can ask people to look out for, because you're going to be able to know exactly what difference your beer is making. And I think that's going to be a game changer for us.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. We'll be sharing everything that you guys are dropping as well. And on the website, we'll have everything to do with Brewgooder and a bunch of videos and stuff like that on the same page that the podcast is going to be on. Good. Just so everybody checking out Cans Across the World can see exactly what you're up to as well.
Nice.
But thanks very much for being a guest in this week's podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Seán. And if anyone ever wants to get in touch with me, just alan@brewgooder.com. I'd love to talk beer and hopefully get our beers over to Northern Ireland as well. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Take care.